The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3Advance. They're incredible. Go to 3advance.com. That's the number 3advance.com.
Empire.
What happens when that thing you worked your whole life for gets postponed?
It was a mixed bag because there were some people who really didn't want the Olympics to happen this year because they knew that their competition was training still. They had access to facilities, but they themselves didn't. And so they were just thinking like, this isn't a fair fight.
That's American Olympic heptathlete Chari Hawkins on waiting out a pandemic before going for the gold. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Chari Hawkins' story is inspiring on its own. She admittedly wasn't born with gifted athletic genes. She turned herself into one of America's most versatile athletes anyway. But now, she, like the rest of her competitors, have to wait out the world, defeating a virus before she'll get her shot in Tokyo. We're also going to speak to a former Canadian Olympian, Craig Buntin, who transitioned from figure skating to tech entrepreneur as CEO of Sportlogiq, on the data side where athletic improvement became his new life's work. But let's start today with marrying both of those ideas. How do you train and get better when you are locked out of your modern training centers, as that future is now? So, Olympic athletes are trying to figure out how to stay in shape for the new date of their Summer Games, which will happen next year in Japan. Michael Tabb wrote a piece for Quartz called How Olympic Athletes Are Training from Home During the Coronavirus Crisis. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm okay. So what did you learn about how the Olympic athletes, clearly on a delayed schedule now, are staying in shape?
Yeah, so my teammate and I, Megan McDonough, have been spending a couple months sort of talking to a bunch of different athletes and trainers and following their training routines. And this really shifted suddenly we really started noticing it right at the end of February, beginning of March, where a lot of competitions were being canceled, and then suddenly also training facilities were being closed. So suddenly all these different Olympians around the world didn't have the equipment they were used to, and many of them were training at their homes without much stuff, so they were finding ways to improvise. And at this point, they were still training for the Olympics because it hadn't been canceled yet. So they were finding all sorts of things around their house, whether that was, groceries or heavy things like KitchenAid mixers, and doing home workouts, whether that was squats or flexibility exercises or different mental practices. So things like mindfulness, yoga, other things like that. And when the Olympics were canceled, a lot of them kept up with this because, they're the world's top athletes. They need to find ways to stay in shape.
The mindfulness thing I get. Give me the ingenuity with groceries. What did you learn from the everyday items that they're using that they think will translate when they actually compete in the games in Tokyo next year?
Yeah, so a lot of groceries are sort of standardized weights. You get a 10-kilogram bag of potatoes, one mentioned, and can do squats with that. Or someone else didn't mention potatoes, but she was using her standing mixer. Someone else lifting milk cartons as sort of an improvised squat rack. Because, who has a squat rack in their house? Yeah, you can do things like lunges with them. You can do all sorts of things with the chair, different sorts of like push-ups and things like that.
There are some, though, like I'm thinking of pole vaulters and shot putters and javelin. I don't know what they do right now.
Yeah, it's definitely easier for some Olympians than others. Like rowers, for instance, often will have an erg in their home. So they can practice on that, even though it's not the same as on the water, especially if they're on, say, a boat of 4 or a boat of 8. But for people like, pole vaulters or gymnasts who require a very specific floor to land their tumbles and do it all safely, there's only so much you can do. And so some of them, we talked to a gymnast, and what a lot of them are doing is sort of doing an off-season training routine where it's really about keeping muscle tone, keeping nutrition, and a lot of these different things, and then figuring that when you get closer to competition, you'll be able to do a lot of those more specific skills that really are what you need to be focusing on in your season.
All right, so they're throwing potatoes around or using them as squat racks, whatever. How about technology? Did you learn about anybody that is trying to implement things through wearables or data analytics as they conduct their workouts at home and away from their training facilities?
That's a good question. Not many of them were specifically mentioning that with this. We didn't notice an increase in that when people were shifting to doing things at home. We did notice while doing some of our preliminary research that there are a lot of devices different people use, whether it's a headset or something called a focus band we were looking at a bit, where it sort of gives you tactile stimuli, different sorts of biometric trackers. Lots of people use things like Fitbits, which track your sleep, because sleep and recovery is an increasingly popular area for athletes to be focusing on. And I'm sure a lot of them are keeping up on that pretty closely, especially with different things like sleep. But we didn't notice a change per se.
All right, I'll leave you with this then. You mentioned that they're practicing mindfulness and they're trying to stay in a good mental space. Did you get a sense of how, and I'm sure everyone's different, but did you get a sense of how they're all kind of, this is the biggest moment of their athletic lives for sure, how they're mentally handling what has happened this year?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely varies person to person. Not everyone we initially spoke with wanted to give an on-the-spot reaction to the Olympics being canceled, because, I mean, it's hard on everyone, but I think for a lot of them, the hardest part was when the competitions for qualifying started being canceled, because suddenly they had this dream that they were no longer able to practice for properly, that they were no longer able to figure out how they were even going to get there. So it was a lot of very, very sudden stress and anxiety. And also, I mean, these athletes want it to be a level play, want people from different parts of the world who are their best competitors to not be able to be there alongside them. So it's been really hard, but I think clarity has been really helpful. I think having the Olympics be canceled for a lot of them just provided some clarity. So at least they know now what they are training for and can set their sights on that.
Michael Tabb's piece is called How Olympic Athletes Are Training from Home During the Coronavirus Crisis, and it's on Quartz. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Up next, Chari Hawkins, U.S. Olympic heptathlete, on the virus stealing Olympic dreams for now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. Our guest this week was supposed to be heading to the Olympics in a couple of months, but that has been postponed until, well, we don't know when. Chari Hawkins, a heptathlete for the United States, joins us now. It's a pleasure to have you here, Chari. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, let's start with just your general reaction to hearing that the Olympics were not going to take place this summer.
I think for me, it was more of a relief in a couple different ways. The first was that I was afraid that they were going to actually just cancel the Olympics completely. So the fact that they were only postponing and not canceling was a big relief. And second of all, I mean, for the last couple of weeks, I've been on lockdown in my own apartment, and I don't have a huge, crazy home gym to continue working. So I did feel as though I wasn't able to prepare for one of the biggest competitions of my life properly. And so the fact that I am going to have the opportunity to get back to training and, make the Olympics in a good way, I think that it was probably for the best.
What were you and the other athletes, if you were communicating about this, what were you all saying in the lead up to the decision?
So we did have a pretty crazy powwow before they did make the announcement, where I got to talk to over 300 other athletes, not just in the track and field world, but across USA sports for the Olympic team. And it was amazing to hear a lot of their stories. It was a mixed bag because there were some people who really didn't want the Olympics to happen this year because they knew that their competition was training still. They had access to facilities, but they themselves didn't. And so they were just thinking like, this isn't a fair fight. There were people who were begging it not to be postponed because there was a girl who has been away from her fiance for the last 2 years. And she's like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I can do it for another year. Like, I really want it to happen this year. I've been working so hard. It was just a mixed bag of emotions. It was pretty amazing to hear everybody's story. And you don't realize, sometimes you kind of think about what you're going through. And you don't realize how this is affecting other people as well. So it was really eye-opening to just see everybody's reactions. It was very, I wouldn't say there was a unanimous want or need from anybody.
I mean, it's interesting because listen, you guys get depersonalized. You put on the uniform and you're wearing the flag, and we just have expectations, and people forget there are fiancés and inability to get to things and life. And, so it's refreshing to hear it, honestly, from you all to say, we are humans here, and, we want, if we're going to have the biggest moment of our lives, at least athletically, we want it to happen in a safe and productive way.
Right. I think a lot of people also just think that the people that go to the Olympics were just these genetically blessed, incredible athletes. And there are some people who really are that way, and they're legends. But there are people, I would consider myself somebody who has clawed her way to where I am now. And putting in 9 hours of focused work every single day, coming home, 3 hours of recovery at home, completely devoiding myself of a social life just so that I can make a goal. And I'm not a machine, so not having going out or not, seeing my family a lot, that really weighs on you, and you just kind of have to know that there's this bigger goal in mind. And yeah, it is interesting to see how people sometimes take professional athletes as not real people, just, you were just blessed and good for you. And it's like, no, we actually work tirelessly to get to where we are.
Do you think it's even possible, considering how many different disciplines you're in? So your situation is very unusual because you're practicing so many different things to compete in what you were going to compete in. Do you think you reasonably could have been ready for the Olympics based on what's going on right now?
If it continued the way that it was continuing, absolutely not. Even if we were on lockdown for another month and then it was completely lifted, that would mean that the Olympic trials by that time would be in a month's time, and I would have almost 2 months off and only a month to prepare. And by that time, you just can't get the same amount of practices in. And especially I do 7 different disciplines, and most of them have to be taken outside and be trained with another person's eye. And it was almost impossible for me to do what I needed to do.
Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence that, the Australian Federation and the Canadian Federation had basically said that they weren't going to go, which started the ball rolling towards the IOC decision to at least postpone the games. Was there any discussion in amongst the American athletes about whether you would make a statement about whether you collectively?
We did talk about it in that little small sample size, because there are obviously many more athletes than just 300. So I wouldn't be able to talk for anybody else, but there was a pretty unanimous consensus that if they decided to continue with the Olympics, America definitely wanted to go. And I think that just kind of speaks not to the fact that we don't care about the coronavirus, because we absolutely do. All of us would have gone being terrified the entire time. And I think that was one of the reasons why it was a better decision that it was postponed, because as Olympic hopefuls, that's all we think about all the time. That's what we're training for. And it's crazy to think like we would be willing to risk our lives so that we could do this dream. And it seems so silly, like why would you do that? But that was the reality of the situation. We all wanted to go, and I think that's why it was a good thing that they postponed, because we would have continued training in terrible conditions just because we love what we do and we want to get better, and we're also afraid other people are doing it, and so we have to do it. And yeah, it was definitely the best decision, because I genuinely think that America would have, all of the athletes would have fought to go, and they would have gone regardless of the risk.
We spend a lot of time on this show talking about how athletes connect to fans. You're in a very unique situation where you're an Olympian, but you're not specifically in the discipline that typically gets a lot of exposure in the prime moments of, say, the NBC coverage. But I've seen how much you're doing in social media to try to outreach to fans. Could you kind of take me through how you think about branding yourself to your fans?
I mean, honestly, my whole thing is I'm not anything special. Like, I'm from a small town. I was pretty athletic growing up, but I wasn't anything special. And even growing up through college, like I worked hard, but I kind of just went through the motions. And when I really asked myself, what do you want to accomplish? And I told myself, you know what? I want to go to the Olympics. I want to work as hard as I can so that I can get as good as I can. I really started pushing myself, and I saw everything that I truly wanted and I truly worked for on purpose come towards me, and like I just started getting better. And I don't think it was by chance. I think it was because I was really focused. And all I want to share with my community is, honestly, if I can do it, you can do it. You don't need to be this like amazing, like 1 in a million athlete. And I mean, those 1 in a million athletes are incredible. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but I just always wanted to just be as pure as possible in saying, I really know you can do this, and I want to help you because I've been there. So I try really hard. Like I just don't want to like hold back secrets. I try to tell like, oh my goodness, this was the aha moment for me. Let me show you my way so that you can get there easier than I did. I paved the way so that you can have an easier road to get to where you want to go.
There's so many different platforms. What works for you? Like when you're trying to reach people and you're trying to speak to people with your messages, what's been working for you, and how has that changed as you've kind of evolved in branding yourself?
I mean, I think a lot of people are on my Instagram just because my Instagram kind of happened by chance. I just started making a little video journal for my own self. I had almost no followers, and then when I made my first Team USA team, my following just kind of grew, and then I moved to England and it grew more. And so I was just able to, share and connect. So I think a lot of people just started following me on there. And I actually just started a TikTok last week. And it's actually been really fun because I've been able to connect to like a younger generation and show them, I've had people contact me and say like, I didn't even know the heptathlon existed, and now I want to try it. And I mean, that's what social media is all about, is really just being able to branch out and really like reach out to people, get them involved, show them what I do. And if they want to do it, encourage them to do so.
Let me ask you about your training a little bit. What kind of tech are you using in terms of, are you getting biometric data? Are you using wearables? How do you go about training for the disciplines that you perform in?
So I don't really wear like too many things other than I do have my Polar watch that I wear every day that tracks my my heart rate, and it allows me to be able to say like if I'm tired, I look down at my watch and I see that my heart rate's in a good spot, so I can say, I don't feel recovered, but like my watch is telling me that I'm recovered, and it allows me to push myself through when I'm tired. Because now I know that I'm not tired, as tired as I feel. My mind's playing tricks on me. My heart rate is perfect. Let's continue going. So I love that. And then I also wear a Nimbus band, which cellularly charges yourself. When we get tired, we tend to have negative and positively charged cells. And that game, it's like super old. And it's like called Snake. And they used to play it on your phone, and you'd collect a little coin, and then the snake would get longer. And as the snake got longer, you would go slower, slower, slower. That's kind of what our cells do. So what this does is it positively charges everything and then makes everything scatter and go quickly. And now you have the energy of a 10-year-old. It's actually great.
It's cool. I mean, you're using this modern stuff, but it actually sounds like you're kind of old school, really, more than anything. Like you're not overly dependent on data in your training, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, no, I am going to, I think this year I'm going to try, you always try to adapt when you learn new things. You always try. I've never been one to shut off an idea if somebody brings something to me. And so I am going to try to see if I can bring data into my training a little bit more this next year. But as of now, I haven't done much of it. So yeah, I am pretty old school.
All right, I'll let you go with this. How did you end up choosing heptathlon? Like that is such an unusual choice. How did you end up going in that direction?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because I thought when I remember somebody told me you should do the heptathlon, I actually thought they were just making it up. And that was my first thought is I've never heard of that before. And the second thing that I thought it was, biking, swimming, like a triathlon, but with way more events, more things. And I just was like, yeah, no, like I'm not a big swimmer. I don't really know if that's up my alley. And they're like, no, it's just all these track events right in a row. And when I was in high school, I did do the high jump, the long jump, and the hurdles, which are more difficult skills to master. So it made the transition to the actual heptathlon a little bit easier and smoother.
It's really cool. Congratulations on all your success. And I can't wait to see you perform in Tokyo. Whenever that happens, we can't wait to see you perform.
Yes. I mean, I'm really hoping that at the end of this summer, we are able to do a couple of events because I just think it would be really fun to get a good score going into next year and, just have this season be able to test. I got a lot better this season. And so I was really excited about competing, and it would be really fun to have that opportunity. So we'll see what this, hopefully we can all as a world continue working hard to get rid of this coronavirus, and we can be a healthy nation and a world again, and we can start competing and bring our sports back. I'm excited. Yeah,
the games will be there. The medals will be there. They're not going anywhere. So hopefully, it's not happening this summer, but hopefully soon we'll see you we'll put a medal around your neck. That'd be a wonderful experience.
Yeah. That I know for sure. No, I appreciate you taking the time for sure.
Chari, thank you so much. Good luck with everything. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thank you so much.
Up next, Craig Buntin, CEO of Sportlogiq, on modern training in this unusual time in our sporting history. This is the Future Sport Podcast. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3Advance. So let's take a moment to thank our friends at 3Advance. These guys are ranked one of the nation's top app developers. Their user experience and cloud expertise has helped grow a bunch of sports tech startups, including Team Builder, T-Box Tour, and In-Game Fantasy. So if you're looking for a development partner to bring your future sport tech to life, look these guys up. Go to 3advance.com. They're the team to make it happen, and advance you will. That's the number 3advance.com, and tell them Future Sport sent you. Our guest this week is Craig Buntin, who's the co-founder and CEO of Sportlogiq, which is an AI-powered sports analytic company. But his background is as an athlete, specifically an Olympian, as a pairs figure skater back in the early aughts of the 2000s. And I think that's the best place, Craig, really to start with you. I want to get into your company, obviously, but as an Olympian, hearing the news that the Olympics have been postponed, or at least the Summer Games, for a year, what was your reaction to hearing that?
I think we're all a little bit desensitized to shocking news these days. I'll be honest with you. I mean, my reaction to that was that, okay, that's great. At least athletes, their families, fans are going to be safe. I think we're dealing with a pretty big crisis right now where I think we all need to be sacrificing across the board. I mean, the fact that they're not saying this is canceled and, off to another 4-year cycle, at least pushing it a year back. It's like a lot of the athletes who have either qualified or who are prepared this year do get another year and they're going to get that shot. It's tragic, but not nearly as tragic as a lot of other things that are happening right now. So I think we all kind of just need to, keep our noses down and keep going.
If they had decided to move forward for the sake of being a distraction or not wanting to lose the money that's involved with running the Olympic Games, do you, thinking back to your days as an athlete, do you think you would have been able to properly train to be ready to go in a couple of months and compete in the games?
I'm trying to rewind, a few years back, and I was a pretty bull-headed athlete. I probably would have found a way, and I think I can speak for a number of athletes, but it's kind of the job of the governing bodies and the organizations to ensure that the athletes are safe, right? And the athletes do what athletes want to do, which is win. So I think an athlete probably would have found a way to do it, but making sure that the rules are in place to kind of pull them back is key.
All right, let's talk about Sportlogiq a little bit here. You've transitioned over into the AI space. What got you interested in that?
So when I retired from sport, I found myself looking for my next big goal, right? I spent 20 years training for the Olympics. I had one single focused goal. And, I came out, I got my MBA, and at the end of that, kind of look forward to say, okay, what do I do with the next 20, 30 years? And I did an independent study. It was a real deep dive into, what industries need to be disrupted, what new technologies are coming, and realized that at the time, machine learning, neural nets, and all these different, types of new technologies were looking like they were going to begin shaping the world. And so I basically set out and said, okay, I listed a few key problems that I wanted to tackle for the next 20, 30 years of my life. And I knew that this was going to be a tool that was going to get me there. Just really went out, put the sign on the wall that says this is going to be the biggest, best AI tech company that has ever existed. And let's set that goal right now and let's get started.
You were part of, in the Olympics, pairs figure skating, and figure skating in general, of course, is the most prominent sport that occurs. So, you're the one who had a billion eyes on you. More nervous for that or heading to Silicon Valley and asking for money from the VCs? What's a tougher sell for you?
Oh, yeah, what a great question. I got to tell you, the very first time I went out to actually speak publicly, never mind pitch, but I was pitching something, but actually to stand in front of people, I walked in thinking exactly that. I've been up in front of millions of people. This should be easy. And I walked out and I froze. I totally lost all focus. I forgot what I was going to say. And I got off at the end of it and I realized I almost started laughing almost uncontrollably. It's I was more comfortable standing at center ice with, sequins and velvet pants than I was just standing in a room with a couple people talking about, something that I'm quite comfortable with. And it took just like skating. It took a lot of training and it took a lot of work and it took a lot of practice to get comfortable. Now it feels like second nature, but man, those first few pitches were far more terrifying than any competition I ever went into.
Maybe you should have gone there in the sequins and velvet pants. You would have felt comfortable. It would have been totally fine.
No joke. You're bang on. I probably would have.
So here you are 5 years later. What's your main focus with your company? What spaces are you guys looking at closely?
So we're a team of 21 full-time PhDs. We've been funding research at 12 university research labs over the last 5 years. We have 10 patents that we filed for around the technology. We are building technology that allows videos to be intelligent. So we can take any broadcast feed from anywhere. So let's use, NCAA football as an example. We can use the video feeds that those teams are already using, track the movements of all the players, understand tactically where the players are moving, how many plays they've done, and actually break those plays down and allow the coaches and the teams to see the game in a way that they've never, been able to just easily filter and see.
How about sports betting? How are you guys viewing that? Clearly, listen, sports are down right now, but they'll be back at some point. And clearly in the United States, it goes jurisdiction to jurisdiction about who's legalized it, who hasn't. There's been a slow rollout here over the last few years. How are you guys envisioning that space for your company?
So let's just the fact that so sports betting needs to get information, right? Information drives odds, it drives content, it drives everything in the sports betting industry. The way that data is being collected right now. So currently there are a few, big players in the space that have 8 to 10,000 employees literally out in stadiums, either tagging data manually or sitting in front of computer screens tagging those videos. And so that's how the entire industry is powered right now. There are over $150 billion of wagers in the U.S. every single year, all powered by 8 to 10,000 people tagging video. Now, the thing with that is, one, people can't tag video fast, accurate, scaled up enough. Two, people don't see the entire game. So a person might say, that's a pass or that's a shot, but they don't say that that was a pass under pressure that broke a defensive line in this position. And so the information that is now getting fed into this pipeline, one, because it's automated, and two, because it's way more comprehensive than it's ever been, is really, and I can't understate this enough, it's flipping the industry on its head. And so for us, we just see the entire industry now is about these insights, odds that are way more comprehensive, way faster, way more useful to anybody in the industry.
This does feel like the biggest change that is coming to sports media is going to be gambling and how they implement in-game betting, right? I mean, are we on to something here?
Oh, 100%. And the thing is, the reason a lot of the, let's say like player prop bets as an example, the reason a lot of those prop bets aren't done live is because you have to have a person manually looking at those, assessing them, shutting down the lines, setting the odds as the game goes. And you just can't offer the number of odds that bettors are demanding right now. You can't bet, you can't offer that whole wide range of products simply because the data can't be captured and assessed and distributed fast enough.
In terms of esports,
that's where we come in.
Are you guys getting into esports, and how are you viewing that emerging space?
So there's sort of two sides of the coin to what we do. We do computer vision, which is we take videos in and then assess them and produce data. And then there's analysis of that data. In esports, the second component would be the only component that's actually relevant for us. We're not in it yet. It's something that for us, we see there's still huge opportunities in traditional channels, but it's going to be, there's no question that esports are going to be a huge factor moving forward into the next few years.
Let's go back to the media organizations and get back on the topic of how they're going to change content. As you talk to them and what their needs are now and what they perceive to be in the future, what are the conversations like with them? What do they want? What kind of technology are they looking for?
Well, this is a debate that I take this position quite strongly in that I actually don't think that anybody wants data. Nobody wants analytics. That's not stories. That's not content per se. What people want is, we've got 158 million data points, and we can turn that into sort of an automated research system. So if you're a commentator and you need to tell a storyline, we can feed you, let's say, the 10 most likely stories that are going to happen throughout the game, and then track those stories on a second-by-second basis. So that at any point, if the thing that you're seeing as a commentator actually fits the stories that we're feeding, suddenly you've got all the data and all the insights to back up the story that you want to tell. So we see this as we're trying to turn something that is by definition not useful, like just not easy to work with, into something that is a part of the daily workflow. And so it's an education around what the product is and how it's used. It's an education to stop trying to bucket it into this is analytics, but more so this is the tool that helps feed you the story.
And in terms of training, how do you view what you guys are doing to help the athletes train better and perform better? So
I would say there's if this tool was around when I was training, it would have completely changed my life. There are
even in figure skating, in figure skating, Craig, really?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
my original idea for this, like, we built the technology for the sake of the technology existing. Our first application was a figure skating application. There's always these big judging controversies, and we actually could show. We did a piece with one of the media outlets here in 2015 that showed the U.S. Figure skater, and showed the Russian figure skater, and showed the speed in, the height, the speed out, and just explained why the marks were what they were. So 100%. But I think, like, more than anything, so I'll use soccer as an example. We track 15 leagues globally. So we can use the broadcast feed, so we don't need to get into stadium and set up equipment or do anything like that. So we have a universal data set across 15 leagues. So if I'm a scout and I'm looking for a player that plays a certain style of play, rather than have to go out and watch, 1,000 different players and want to sift through all that video, I can simply say, I'm looking for this type of player with this type of style, these skills, and it'll filter the number of players that I need to go look at. So it at least gives me a starting point, right? So I can go look at 100 people instead of 1,000 or 10,000. And so just simply being able to do that off the top is huge.
I will tell you, if you find a way to remove the subjectivity of the French judge, we're all going to be very upset. We need something to yell about here, Craig. Okay, so hate to break it to you,
but it is so true. It was. I was having I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but you laugh, but it's absolutely true. In soccer in the UK right now, there's this huge debate about offside, and the fact is the technology making offsides too accurate and it's disruptive to the game.
Yes.
People are annoyed that the game is not working the way that it normally does because it's too accurate. And so you're absolutely. What's hilarious is you're right. There needs to be somewhat of a balance. And I mean, this kills engineers, because engineers are just told, look, make this thing accurate. But,
right.
And it's an ongoing debate.
I mean, it's one of the huge ones. Like, human subjectivity does matter in sports, that we actually wouldn't like sports if it was too perfect. Like, we want the balls and strikes. We want the strike zones to be different, whether we want to say that or not. We want the judges to judge figure skating because we don't want the metric. We want to yell about something if we feel like they're wrong.
You're bang on. I agree. And this is usually the first conversation that happens as we begin to develop something new. It's what do we actually want to solve, right? The whole idea originally was around, in skating, like, can we do an accurate assessment of a jump or of a lift? The answer is yeah. Does it matter? No. You're better off building a tool that can describe to fans what's happening. Like, that's more fun. That's more useful. I mean, yeah, you're bang on.
I mean, listen, I never thought I'd be sticking up for the French judge, but here we are. 2020 has been a very, very, very strange
you and me
year.
both.
Craig Buntin is the co-founder, the CEO of Sportlogiq. He, of course, is a former Canadian Olympian in pairs figure skating. Craig, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Really appreciate the time.
That'll do it for us this week. You can reach out to me directly at Bram, BRAM, at ampiremedia.com, AMPIRE media.com, for stories about sports and tech in the middle of a pandemic. We want to hear how you're being creative, innovative, safe, and optimistic. And as always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. The Future Sport Podcast is brought to you by 3 Advanced, developers of sports tech apps that are AI-powered and UX-focused. So if you're looking to create some apps for your startup or your sports biz calls for some artificial or business intelligence, you should check out 3 Advanced. They're incredible. Go to 3advanced.com. That's the number 3advanced.com.